My aunt died a couple weeks ago. Like a lot of you, I've had to learn how to mourn during a pandemic. Some people have lost loved ones, some people have lost jobs, some people have lost even more than that. A couple months ago, I interviewed Jennifer Fondrevay. We were part of the same Toastmasters Club a couple years ago. She's a very wonderful person. She focuses on mergers and acquisitions and the people side of it, and also helps companies a lot of the more emotional aspects. We always kept in touch. She lost her mother this past March during the pandemic. She did a wonderful video about how do you mourn during a pandemic. We talked about that, what you'll see over the next hour. During that recording, I was not good with the audio learning, and I did not get her full presentation. So I'm going to play that for you now. This is Jennifer J. Fondrevay, How Do You Mourn During a Pandemic? It is very wonderful, and I hope you watch not only this, but the full interview. If you enjoy what you hear here, please subscribe to the Laugh and Learn podcast. I'm also on YouTube. I'm currently doing a weekdaily political series. It's part being serious, part satire, and 100% just positive. Try to keep the positive vibes going. Thank you for listening, and thank you for watching. And here is Jennifer J. Fondrevay on how to mourn during a pandemic. And the audio should work this time, so yay. Here we go.
As my mom pulled her 1970 red AMC Gremlin to the side of the road, after hearing the distinct sound of a police car siren, one thought crossed my mind. Can you get arrested at 10 years old? This happened to my sister and me a lot when we went with our mom to work. She'd misjudge how long it took to get from one gig to the next, and inevitably we'd get pulled over by the cops for speeding. So what exactly did my mom do for a living, you ask, other than speed? From the 1960s through the 1990s, my mom modeled. She was known as Olivia. Yes, I have the distinct pleasure of having a fashion model mom. But let me be clear, a Chicago model back in the 1960s treated modeling like a job. She did the work, like catalog shoots and runway shows at department stores like Marshall Field's. She modeled to pay the mortgage. My mom divorced when I was 12, and though she'd been a teacher, she determined she'd make more money as a model to support us. Raising two kids already as a model was a bit of an exception, but more than that, she was an exceptional beauty. I have experienced that wonder and awe when you walk into a room and all conversation stops as people stare. In this case, at my mother. It didn't matter where we were, she just had that power. I went to an all-girls Catholic high school, and my mom came once for career day. Listen, even the nuns knew we weren't all going to become nuns. And the nuns, the priests, my classmates were all transfixed by my mother. Girls in blue-gray uniform skirts and cardboard white shirts all listened raptly as my mom extolled the virtues of inner beauty, good posture, walking with grace, and getting a good education. So why do I share this with you? My mom passed away this past March after a 20-year battle with Parkinson's. And while all attention is diverted on the pandemic, I don't want her contributions to people on this planet to be forgotten. This is the first of 3 lessons she imparted on me that helped propel my career and those of many others. Look your best at every moment. Pay attention to what you wear. Throughout my career, after every interview, my mom would always call and ask, "So, what did you wear?" And I'd describe everything from pantyhose up to earrings. And once she had a complete mental picture, she'd always say, "I bet you made the right first impression." She knew that people do judge a book by its cover, and that making that right first impression would be critical to everything that I did afterwards. But that wasn't the most important lesson. The most important was respect yourself and others will respect you. Really, probably the most valuable advice of all in work, in life, in parenting, as a partner. Respect yourself and others will respect you. In my mom's view, if you didn't respect yourself, why would others? And I saw throughout my life that when I respected myself, others acted in kind. It's when I didn't that I got a like response. But then the third lesson, beyond executive presence, be present. I saw the power of presence when people dropped forks in restaurants as my mom walked by. As her daughter, she expected me to have presence. I got after-school lessons in how to walk in high heels and how to read a room. But more important for her was that you be present as a person, as a friend, as a work colleague. That when someone was counting on you, you would be there. It taught me to be courageous at work, that when someone was counting on me, I would step forward. It's why I do the work that I do now. I used to think that my mom got out of speeding tickets because my sister and I were really good at acting sick on the side of the road. And then I thought it was because of her beauty. But later on, I realized it was because she didn't just rely on her looks. Hearing her explain to each police officer every time that she was speeding to the next gig to put food on the table for her kids was a life lesson I'll never forget. She taught me to appeal to the head and to the heart. How do you mourn someone during a pandemic? I don't know. But I think you proclaim loudly and often the contributions that they made. To the world, she was Olivia. To me, she was my mom. And I cherish the legacy she left. Thank you.
Jennifer is an incredible speaker. I think you're really going to enjoy this podcast. Afterwards, I give a hold on. There we go. With a Sunday service here. After the podcast, I give a brief post-eulogy of my aunt because I don't want her contributions to be lost to history either. She was such a wonderful woman, and I will always love her. And loss ebbs and flows. For me, at first, it didn't seem real, but we'll talk about that. Enjoy Jennifer J. Fondrevay. Jennifer Fondrevay, welcome to Laugh and Learn with Vern. Good to see you.
Thank you. Great to see you as well.
We go back to Toastmasters. About 2 years ago, I joined. I think you joined. Actually, no, I might have been 2 or 3. You were what, about 2 years ago?
We auditioned the same day. Remember?
We did. You have a better memory than me.
At the same time.
Why did you join?
Because I had a message I wanted to get out to the world, and people had said, "Oh, you're such a great speaker." But I knew I thought I was an okay speaker, but I wanted to get better. And I knew I needed feedback from really good speakers, and Windy City Professional Speakers, the group that we belonged to, was just the right group for me. And I remember, because I auditioned after you, I thought, holy cow, I hope I get in. I was like, I wonder if there's a cutoff, if they only allow one of the 3 people auditioning today. And I was like, oh, I'll have to come back.
I was trying to hope I wouldn't get too red on this podcast, but I think I already exceeded the color limit for the computer, so that's okay. Well, that's very, very flattering for you to say. We talked earlier, and one of the things I noticed about you is you're always so put together, and you had this presence where a lot of speakers, you could tell they were working their way through it, whereas for you, it seemed like the minute you got there, you were like, this stage is mine, and I'm going to own it. Where does that come from?
Oh, well, thank you for saying that. Well, as you know, as we talked about it, I grew up with that mantra. My mom was a fashion model in the 60s, and I was your typical pudgy little kid. My nickname in 4th grade was Miss Piggy. And I just remember my mom, who was actually very good about it, like never was making me feel bad about that, but just said it, don't worry, sweetie, there will become a point where people will show you respect, but you have to you have to show that you respect yourself. And part of that starts with paying attention to how you present yourself. And so that just stuck with me. And because she was a model, I saw a lot of fashion shows, and it just made me realize that people react to you when you carry yourself with a certain grace and respect for yourself. And it shouldn't be forced. You should genuinely feel that. And I benefited from getting that advice from my mom at an early age.
You started, when you're talking about your mom, the reason I reached out to you is because you gave this very lovingly tribute to your mom on LinkedIn. And it was something that resonated with me because I'm a mama's boy. And even my dad and I, we get along really well, but growing up, my dad was the one my mom stayed home. She worked part-time. So my dad would come home, we'd have dinner, but during the day, my mom would be like, let's go get sport cards, or, she was the one who'd take us shopping, and my dad would be like, why'd you buy all this stuff? And, she was, oh, it's fine. That was my mom. And she got cancer when I was 10, and she beat it, thank goodness. But, it's one of those things that I guess it just kind of hit home, and it was just very, very sweet, and everything you did. And so you started with a post, and then you ended up making a video, which we're going to watch in a little bit. How did you end up deciding to make that video?
Well, I would say the post just came naturally to me. I will say, so my mom passed away in March of this year, 2020. But she'd been battling Parkinson's for 20 years. And the first version of that post that I wrote talked about her struggle with Parkinson's and, just the battle and the courage of all of that. And then I read it and I thought, that's not the version of my mom I want to share with people. I want to share the version of my mom that made me who I am, the person who you saw at that Windy City. And that version of my mom was the fashion model version, who was so encouraging by how she led her life, and the lessons that she passed on to me are what I captured in that tribute that I wrote to her. And what was fascinating to me is that, as you know, through, unfortunately, the pandemic, you haven't been able to have funerals. We're hoping to have the funeral for my mom in October. And I felt a need to pay tribute to her. And a couple of people wrote on that LinkedIn post, they said, you have figured out a way to grieve without gathering, because the reactions of people were just so wonderful. It really helped me. And my heart goes out to anyone right now who's lost a loved one, because it is tough, right? The typical milestone that you would have for that moment to say goodbye to someone you just haven't been able to have. And then in August, the Ignite Chicago team reached out and said, oh, I have to say I was still kind of in shock and grieving, but I thought, as a speaker, get back up on the horse, as we've said to each other. And I thought, why not use those 5 minutes to just pay tribute to my mom? I've written about her, and in that written tribute, I said, how do you mourn during a pandemic? And my thought was, you honor that person by talking about them, by sharing with people the contributions that they made to you and to others. And I thought, I've done it in the written word. Now I should talk about her. And so that was really my motivation for doing it. But I'd have to tell you, Eric, I halfway through, doing it, I was like, why the hell did I do this to myself? Like, because it was grieving her all over again. I was like, you are an idiot. What? Like, why you did this to yourself? No one told you had to do this. I'm very glad I did it, but it was harder than I expected it to be.
For those that are not familiar, what is Ignite Chicago?
So Ignite Chicago, Pechakucha is a format for speaking, and you get 5 minutes, 20 slides, 15 seconds a slide.
Okay.
And you can do 20 different slides. You can have one slide that's the same throughout, but you get 5 minutes, and it forces you as a speaker to be very precise and concise, but it's a great, I think, a great test for a speaker to really know what you want to say and present it in a way that you convey your message in a short period of time. And so, you know, I even said jokingly when I shared that I was going to be doing that Ignite session, I said, I'm taking a lifetime of lessons and cramming it into 5 minutes. And I just got, I got it in. I think I had like 5 minutes and 5 seconds to spare.
You were literally right there. You know, it's funny you mentioned, you know, like the extra project, because when you want to become a better speaker, everything you do is essentially an extra project, right? There's a lot of, so I like the fact that you're such a perfectionist and you've learned to be so detail oriented that you, instead of just doing a 5 to 10, 15-minute video, you decided to make it as difficult as humanly possible.
Yeah. I think, unfortunately, the second part of my life, I've just jumped in without thinking. I guess, and that, you know, that means I've become, you know, an entrepreneur when I never expected to be. I wrote a book when I never expected to, and it means, you know, I forced myself to do an Ignite presentation when I probably shouldn't.
But that's a great lesson, right? If you want to force yourself to do something, just jump in, and you'll figure it out. Don't jump into the deep end if you don't know how to swim, but in every other instance, jump right in and see what happens. Because even if something goes wrong, you're still going to learn something. Like, we've all given speeches where, you know, you get up there and you think everything's going to go your way, and then you start talking, kind of what you said earlier, that, you know, you got halfway through and you're like, what am I doing? Yeah.
And I would say, you know, I mean, obviously too, when you know you're giving an emotional speech, it takes extra discipline to just not lose it. And you know, as you said, I have prided myself, again, thanks to lessons from my mom, right? As part of presenting yourself well, right, you want to be able to hold things together. And you know, I was just thankful in my tribute that I did well up until the very last slide. And then after that, I was like, okay, well, at least I'm almost done. I'll get it right in.
That's what brought it home. But you know, I don't want to spoil it. Are you ready? Are you ready to watch it?
Sure. I've actually, I'm going to embarrass myself. I've watched the video afterwards, and I tend not to because I hate watching my performance afterwards, but I've watched it a couple of times, and every time I cried again, and I'm like, oh my God, I've just got to stop doing this to myself. This is just not healthy, but I think I'm okay now.
All right, we'll give it a shot. Either way, here we go. I'm going to share the screen. There we go. There you are. And let's roll. How's that feel?
You know, I was proud of it. I'm still really so glad I did that. And in fact, Ali Karbasi, who runs Ignite Chicago, um, I suggested to him because there was another woman who also just coincidentally did a tribute. A little, hers was multiple stories, but it included a tribute to her mom. And I said, man, it would be great. We should host an event where people just get to pay tribute to someone who they lost, in the last 6 months. I'm just enormously thankful that I had I don't know, the bandwidth, the brain width to do it, and then to just follow through, because I'm proud of telling that story, and sharing. I feel like so much. I don't know. I feel like oftentimes, whether it's Hollywood or TV shows, they focus on the bad dynamics between mothers and daughters and family, and it's like drama and all of that. And God knows I had my fair share of that as well. But I have enormous gratitude for what my mom passed on to me. You know, I've had a couple of people say, "Wow, your mom was so beautiful. How did that feel? And I was like, all I could think about was like, you know what? I just hope I've got her genes. Like that was my hope. Like there wasn't jealousy. It was more just like, man, I hope that, as I get older, I've got her genes, because then maybe I got a shot. It was less about, I hate my mom, and more about I just have enormous respect for her and what she did, and I'm thankful.
What was your favorite slide of that whole deck?
It's hard to choose. I love the slide. It's actually the slide where I talk about the fact that when I was 12, she divorced, and she's got glasses on, and they're see-through, so they're transparent, and she looks just, she looks straight out of California, just happy. She's probably in her late 20s, early 30s, so she'd had me, she'd had my sister, and yet she just still looked vibrant and full of life. And not to say that she didn't later on. I call it her Morgan Fairchild picture, the one at the end where it's like that amount of hair, which looks like the lion from the Wizard of Oz, and everyone's like, wow, your mom is stunning. And I was like, well, that was her FU shot, because that was actually at the end of her modeling career. And she wanted to prove to booking agents, listen, I still got it. So she took that picture, and I was like, anyone who doubted if you could still model, Mom, clearly was wrong.
The end of her career?
Yeah. Yep.
Wow.
That was, I think she may have modeled a couple more years afterwards, but that was more, that shot was her just like, well, screw you if you think I still don't have what it takes. So, but my favorite shot is the one with her sunglasses on. And then obviously the picture at the end where my sister and I are sitting with her, and my sister is in her arms, and we're looking up at the sky. That I remember that. I remember distinctly that photo shoot.
I want to go back to, I kind of want to walk through it a little bit. So you start with this great imagery, right? You're getting pulled over by the police, and the first thing you think is, oh my gosh, can a 10-year-old get arrested? Because who knows, right? Can you walk us through one of those stories that you like vividly remember? Because you talk about getting you and your sister faking sick, and your mom always having, it sounds like you're just honest. Like, do you remember any of those specific moments?
Oh, absolutely. And my uncle who saw the tribute said, oh my God, I used to do that for her when I was little. So apparently my mom had a decades long version of speeding. But in my case, so we lived in Northbrook, and my mom would do, so for folks who are watching this in the Chicago area, we lived in Northbrook, a northern suburb of Chicago, and she would work at Old Orchard. She would do a fashion show in Old Orchard, and my sister and I, particularly on the weekends, she'd drag us along. And she would inevitably then book also a show to do downtown in Chicago. So we'd do the Marshall Fields in Old Orchard, and then my mom was a talker, so after the show would be done, she'd talk with the fashion director and the people in the audience and whatever. We would always leave there late. And my sister and I would be like, we gotta go. Like, even I knew at a young age, I was like, Mom, we are gonna be late.
What are those, what's a fashion show in the 60s and 70s at Old Orchard like? The only ones we really see now are like the Gucci or like what was it like to Old Orchard?
Yeah. So all the department stores, so Carson Peary Scott, Lord and Taylor, Marshall Fields would have fashion shows in the department store. So they would literally mark off a section of the store, typically obviously in the women's department, and you'd have a runway, and inevitably you'd have 5-6 models. The shows would usually last about 30-40 minutes. And they would walk out with the latest looks for the season. And it was a great way for the department stores to obviously give an experience to women who might want to buy something. I mean, those fashion shows really helped encourage sales. I don't know how many my mom did, but I just remember so many weekends going to those, and I'd sit in the back, and sometimes I'd help the women get dressed and zip them up right before they went out. And it was the height of retail, right, where people were going to stores and they would look forward to these fashion shows. And so my mom, though, would misjudge how long it took to get from Old Orchard to downtown Chicago.
We've all been there.
Traffic and, running up, parking her car,
Sure.
all of that. A lesson that I didn't get into in the tribute because I didn't have time, but she also taught me, I think she knew every doorman in the city of Chicago. So when we would go to Marshall Field, she knew the doorman at Water Tower. You had the Ritz-Carlton, the Four Seasons. I think you had the Holiday Inn. I mean, every hotel, because at least she knew, okay, I'm going to probably run late. I need to give my car to somebody. Yeah. She'd tip a doorman and he'd say, don't worry, missus, we'll hold on to your car. And she'd run up to the show, and she knew all of their names, would make sure that, even around the holidays that we would visit them. And that actually, I would have to say, was equally a lesson learned. She never took that stuff for granted. And she had relationships with all of those doormen. I mean, I'm thankful, because we would have also had parking tickets added to the speeding tickets if she hadn't. So, and then I'm not sure if we'd have had any money left afterwards. So it was a good thing.
So your mom, she knows she's got, okay. So then in her head, she's like, all right, well, I know where I'm going. I know there's, Frank is there. I can give him this. So even if I'm running late. So then everything's going right. She's probably like, okay, I'm going to make it just in time. Cause that's what we all think when we're running late, right? We're like, If I just make if I make every stoplight and there's no traffic and there's no accidents, especially on like 90 or 94, right? You're like, yeah, as long as there's no accidents, I'll be fine. And then, so then obviously you get pulled over. So how's this work?
So my sister and I, and she and I were trying to remember who had to do it most, but my mom would turn around, before the cop would come up and say, you have to act sick, act like one of you is sick, right? And my sister would say, I don't want to act sick. And I'd be like, oh dear God, right? So I know my sister and I both did it at one point, and my mom would say, and you gotta get outside the car. And we had a gremlin, an AMC gremlin, as I showed in that tribute, right? And this car that barely held it together. And so we'd slide, one of us would slide out, and act like we felt like we were sick and throwing up on the side of the road. Now my sister's gone on to an acting career in LA. So I'm going to say that it all started with her acting sick on the side of the road. But yeah, I just remember thinking, dear God, when are we ever going to be able to go to one of these shows where we don't get pulled over by the cops?
Now, when you're faking sick, are you literally like are you literally like fake throwing up? Or is it like,
no, way. Yeah. I could not do that. I was not good, nor was, at the time, my sister. So we would, and she would say, well, go out, and then she'd come around and we'd act like we had a upset stomach, and the officer typically, thankfully, would be very sympathetic and say, is your daughter okay? my mom would be, oh, she's okay. She just has tummy problems. And one time the officer was willing to escort us to, I think it was Rush at the time. And Mom's like, no, that's okay.
She's not that sick. Yeah.
We don't need to go to the hospital. We're all good. Thank you, officer. And it just, I mean, you do that enough times as a kid, and you just, it's an imprint. And but fortunately, I took away the right lessons, which is, okay, don't speed so that you have to act sick on the side of the road.
Yeah.
But the lesson that I took from it is the one that I shared. She, she didn't. she talked to the officers. I mean, she made it clear that she was just trying to get us somewhere. And, because ultimately, even though we were acting sick on the side of the road, not every officer fell for that. And so she would ultimately say, listen, I'm just trying to get to my job.
You've mentioned, so you got a good lesson from that. And I think this is one of the sub lessons, but you also talked about how she taught you growing up, you had these lessons after school where you had to learn how to walk in high heels and how to read a room. How do you read a room? Because now that when you said that, from watching you speak,
yeah,
I want to hear what you say, because I think I've seen you do this, but I don't know if I'm right.
Well, I think, and what my worry is, because that can be interpreted as, I'm just going to gauge how people are, and then I'm going to change what I'm about to say based on how people are thinking. What she impressed on me is be sensitive to how people are feeling when you are presenting, and you can pick up on cues when you walk in, and that can be everything from where people sit, how they might make eye contact with each other and with you, or they don't, whether they offer hey, can I get you water, or don't say anything to you. There's a lot of cues that you can pick up. And I, particularly because I worked in advertising for 15 years, I was part of a lot of pitches, whether it was for new business or selling campaigns. And before you do a lot of work on a campaign, but you go into a client meeting and they could have had a really bad day and you have no idea what they've just faced. So you're all excited about your campaign, but if you are clueless to what they may have faced right before they walk into that room, it doesn't matter if you have the best ad campaign ever. They're going to be tuning it out because they're thinking about either the person who just yelled at them, numbers that they haven't hit, bad distribution on a product, whatever it might be. And so it was invaluable, that lesson in particular, because it taught me that your hard work is only half the battle. You have to equally be sensitive to the people who you are speaking to. And I remember in particular, there was a couple of instances where I could just tell something was off. And I would say, because I was the account director, for the 15 years, I could tell, and I would be able to say to a client, is this the right time? I want to make sure that we're sharing this with you when you feel like this is the right moment. And I inevitably, every time a client would say, thank you for asking, I really appreciate that, we're good, or yeah, do you mind if we can do this? Because my creative team would equally be thankful, right? They don't want to present to somebody who's just not ready, or has other things going on. So reading a room is really being tuned into the other person. Like all of the lessons that I shared all link to each other. Being present and having executive presence are tied together, because I can have presence, but that doesn't matter if I'm not present in the moment for the other person. And that's what she wanted to impress on me. It's not just how you look, but it's how you engage with that other person. Because how you look won't matter if they're not engaging back. And if you aren't sensitive enough to that, then you won't be successful. And that served me immensely throughout. And as a speaker, to your point, right, you have to be in tune with the audience. It helps you be a better speaker.
How have you been able to use those skills with how everything's on Zoom now? Has it been a tougher transition? Like, how do you, have you more of an issue reading an audience or reading a room when you have this kind of disconnect where it's over the internet instead of in person? Or have you found ways to be able to read people? Because, I mean, now people have to pitch over Zoom. It's not as easy as being able to walk in.
Well, it's absolutely, it is much harder. And I would say at the beginning of the pandemic, I thought, okay, I'm just going to wait till we can all be in person again. Well,
we all did, right? Yeah.
who knows if that's going to happen, right?
Yeah. End of summer, we'll be fine, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I know.
And it's because I enjoyed, the reason I am a speaker and not just a consultant or an author is I love being in front of people, to have that connection, to have that engagement, to hear what they have to say and what they think and what they're facing. You know, it, as an author, it's a one-way dialogue, and you can now more than ever, you can through reviews, and particularly when you're out promoting your book, but for the most part it's one way. And I became a speaker because I love the two-way aspect of it. It is much harder in a virtual world, but I have found when you are passionate about a topic and you craft, and this is where again I think our being part of Windy City Professional Speakers has been enormously helpful. You can create an experience as a speaker, so even if you are virtual, whether it's through the chat box or pausing and getting engagement from your audience, or having a handout that people do in conjunction with you speaking, there are ways still to involve people so that they're part of the presentation. Because I have to say, I've actually either turned down keynotes or have said, rather than me just speaking to a camera for 45 minutes, let's make this a dialogue. Like, here's ways that we can make this interactive, whether it's polling or handouts or chat box or whatever. There's a multitude of ways to use virtual presenting that allow you to have, frankly, I've realized it's allowed me to have even greater dialogue than before as a speaker, because I'm forcing it now more throughout the speech, as opposed to, you know, your traditional Q&A towards the end. And it's that, you know, when people can feel as though they can reach out to the speaker as part of the discussion, it makes for a lot more robust conversation. So I've actually enjoyed it more than I thought I would, but I would absolutely confess at the beginning, I was like, oh, this is going to be miserable. Because I mean, you're speaking to a green dot.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like, ugh. I just thought that is so not appealing. But I've come to realize it's what you bring to that experience is what you get out of it.
I want to go through the 3 lessons that we talked about, or that you talked about, excuse me. We have talked about them though, because obviously we reached out and I'm like, hey, this speech is amazing. First one was look your best at every moment. Can you give some examples of when, I know you said it has worked for you, right? And you did a great job of describing. I can imagine like your mom on the other end of the phone. You're a very visual speaker, and you can just, I think a lot of people can see that. Like they imagine like talking to their mother. I think it's very relatable, right? You're talking to one of your parents after those, you know, the big moments in your young life, right? And you're on the phone and they're like, what did you wear? And then, you know, what did she always say at the end?
And what she always said, I bet you made the right first impression. And you know, it was just funny. And I included this in the LinkedIn tribute. I didn't in the presentation, but my graduate school friends would just howl with laughter because they could always tell when I was talking to my mom and my dad on the phone, because my dad was in international sales, and he would just grill me. You know, what were the questions that they asked and what did you answer? Yeah. And then he would tell me whether he thought I got the job or not. And then my mom would come on and, and then I would talk to my mom. They were divorced at that point.
How accurate was he?
Actually, I would almost consistently be the same as his assessment. I would say, yeah, I don't think I did as well, or there was, as we all know, right? There's some interviews where you feel confident, and then other ones you don't. The funny thing, sometimes I thought I nailed it and I didn't get it, and then other times where I was surprised that I was offered the job. And my mom would always say, it's because I'm sure you looked good. But what I want to emphasize with that is that wasn't the most important lesson. Her comment always was repeatedly, it's just that first impression allows you to do so much more afterwards. So pay attention to how you present in that. And that's not to say that, you know, how you look is everything, because for her, it was more important. She equally would always say, yeah, your dad's right. I mean, even though they were divorced, they still had respect for one another. And I want to emphasize that because I feel like so much is put on presentation, but that's not the only thing. But it helped me because then after that, they thought, okay, this is someone who pays attention, right, to detail.
Yeah, sure.
And as you and I both know, in the working world, right, you need to make that impression quickly. If you're someone who demonstrates right off the bat that you pay attention to detail, the person interviewing you comes to you with a different impression already because they're thinking, okay, this is someone of merit. If you show up slovenly or pantyhose ripped or odd earrings or whatever, and when I say odd earrings, being mismatched, it's just, if you're not paying attention, then that's a quick impression that someone might take that, well, if you can't do it for yourself, how do I believe you're going to do it on the job?
For the Army, they've said if you walk into a trial and your uniform is not pristine, everything exactly where it needs to be, clean shaven, hair perfect, the entire time, they will just stare at you and they will not pay attention to anything you're saying. And they will just wonder, why did this person not get this right? Literally, they're like, don't even bother showing up. If your boots are not perfectly shined, everything is not starched, everything is perfect. Now, I think that's a little more of an extreme point, but to what you were saying, yeah, you want to, it's the idea of making a good impression. So you have this background, right? You grew up in the fashion world, and not like the, way around the world fashion world. You grew up in like the Chicago suburb, Chicago fashion world. What are some things that you picked up on growing up and even now that are some easy ways for people to look their best, no matter what? Because like you said, it's not always about like looking perfect. You don't have to be like in this like amazing shape, but like, what are some like maybe like tips and tricks for people that if they have an interview or something going on, like some easy ways to do it?
Well, and it is, I'm glad you asked that because I feel like a possible impression could be, well, I got to spend $1 million to look like $1 million. And nowadays, you have so many options and opportunities, and it's the small things that count. I made a joke, right? The having earrings that match, an outfit where it looks like you put thought and consideration into it, and it doesn't have to be glamorous, expensive. People aren't going to look at the label. They're going to look at what care you put into your outfit. So I feel like it's not as though you've got to have the necklace with bling. You don't want things that are distracting. It's simply a demonstration that you have put thought into how you want to be seen as a person across the desk or across the table from the person who's interviewing you. So for me, the important point about that is, I shop regularly at TJ Maxx, right? For me, it's about the little extra thing. I used to get teased all the time. Fondrevay, you always have a scarf on. And, half the scarves I wear are things I picked up at TJ Maxx or old hand-me-downs for my grandmother, right? And that and a brooch, and the important point is it's just how you carry what you're wearing. It's paying attention to that, and then it doesn't matter where you get the clothing, the accessories, the belt, the earrings.
Well, now that kind of transitions good into, so you look the part and you feel confident, and then you want to respect yourself, right? Because that was lesson number 2 was respect yourself or other people won't respect you.
Right. Absolutely.
Now, for you mentioned, and you said there were, respect yourself or other people won't respect you. And then you also had this kind of casual line where you're like, anytime I didn't, I felt, I don't know if you said I felt it or something happened. Can you give an example of some time when like you just, I guess when that happened, when you like weren't totally there and then it kind of came back to you?
Well, I used to, I worked on Coors beer. And for a while, I was the only female on the account side. And I remember thinking, holy cow, what am I doing here, right? I was working all with beer guys.
What is a beer guy like? Are we talking 80s, 90s? When are we talking beer? This is 90s beer guys. So this is like when the Budweiser Penguins are doing their thing?
Right. Budweiser, you had the Clydesdales always. Dr. Galakowitz, Yes, I Am. You had that, What's Up? That was that era
What?
for
Yeah.
Budweiser.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep. So they were clearly number one, but Coors Light and Miller Lite were vying for number two. Before I worked on Coors Light, I worked on Keystone beer, which is your boy, college boy beer, right?
Yeah, I've had a couple.
So the campaign Never Bitter Beer, that was, I get to have credit for that.
You were one of the bitter beer face? Is that the same one or no?
Yep.
You were the bitter beer face?
Yep.
Wow.
Matt Reinhardt and Tom O'Keefe, who now own their own ad agency, were the two creative guys that I worked with, and it made Keystone number one for college beer. Thank you.
Go on. We gotta. Well, at some point we gotta talk about how you that pitch, because that's like that's a world famous. The bitter beer face.
Never bitter beer.
Yeah. Okay. So wherever you want to go with this, anything's good.
Actually, that Keystone campaign is a perfect example, because I felt like a fish. I asked the guy who hired me. I was like, why did you hire me? Like, what am I doing here? Like, I thought it was cool, but then I thought, I don't have beer experience. And he said, Fondrevay. And that, I think all the guys would just call me by my last name. He said, we hired you because you aren't like us. You come at this with consumer packaged goods, problem solution experience, right? That's what we're looking for, because we'll just, beer advertising in the past was just kind of formulaic, and we want to be able to demonstrate what you are really good at, is like, what's the problem we're solving for? And so that was part of the genesis of Never Bitter Beer, because in research it came out that Keystone tended to be a more bitter, that college beers tended to be more bitter, but Keystone was the less bitter of all of those cheaper beers that you could get. And so our creative guys, who were awesome, came up with Keystone Never Bitter Beer, and we had a ton of fun. But I highlight that as an example because I definitely suffered from imposter syndrome. I was thinking, what do I have to contribute? And thankfully I had really good bosses who said, it's because you aren't like us that we wanted to have you on this account, because we think you can bring something new and different to this. And it just was a reminder to me, you have to respect what you bring to the party. Don't try and be like everyone else. Respect what you have to offer and demonstrate that. And so it was a good lesson. And again, a reminder of what my mom had told me to be mindful of from the beginning.
What's one of your favorite wins that you can remember from a time when you've just owned the room? When you've just walked in and you're like, I'm just going to crush this, and then you did.
I would have to say that Keystone campaign was a ton of fun. Keystone, prior to that, had been doing okay, but I think it was number 3 or number 4, and coming up with that campaign, Never Bitter Beer.
Yeah.
And then we had fun with it. Right, you had the faces that people make, and then we did a radio campaign with it, and it was one of those moments where the client, I could just see as we were presenting, he was thinking, "This is awesome! Like, this is going to be great." And it was one of those where I was thankful we were kind of under the radar, because so much attention was at the time on Coors Light, and so Keystone. We were just able to do a ton of things with it, and that campaign really helped establish, frankly, my credibility at the ad agency where I was working at. So it was a good feeling. But I honestly, until you asked me, Eric, I have not thought of that moment in a long time. So it's a good memory.
Well, good. And I'm glad that you don't think of Keystone often, because hopefully everyone over the age of like 19 doesn't. Not that Keystone is a bad beer, but we're more refined these days. Is that the word?
Yes. We'd like to think.
Exactly. Before we get to the third lesson, I want to go back to the video. I'm not going to play the audio, but I want to walk through a couple of the pictures and just kind of get like a little behind the scenes, what's going on here. So I'm going to
Okay.
just flip this, and then we'll share screen. I think this is it, right? An error occurred. All right, search it again. There we go. You're in my search history. I hope you don't think that's too weird. It was research, honestly.
Well, fortunately, I know why.
So okay, so we got this gremlin here. My question for you: did every family in the 1960s and 70s in the middle class in Illinois have a gremlin? Is that how that worked? Because my mom had a gremlin. My dad's family had. Is that just like what it was like? There was like a random Chevy on the road surrounded by gremlins. Is that kind of how that worked?
It was the gremlin or the pacer.
What was the pacer?
Remember the pacer? That's the one that had the big wide body back. They're both by AMC.
Okay.
Both very ugly cars.
Yeah. So a famous story of my family is my uncle borrowed my grandparents' gremlin, and they came home and he had parked it on the side of the road, like it was where like the passenger side was against the curb, but the whole passenger side of the car was like he had huge, like, it was like wrecked. And they came home and they're like, "What happened to the car?" And he's like, "I don't know." And he passed away about 10 years ago. He denied it to the grave. He literally like he goes, "Nah, I don't know what happened." He always denied it. He was a hoop. So then here we go. We got this picture. What is this picture right here? So you and your mom.
Yeah, so this is actually the same photo shoot where the picture at the end with my sister and my mom and me on that little balcony in the, what looks to be kind of an apartment complex.
Yeah.
This is that same day. What I remember about this in particular is I have no clue how to knit. And I remember saying to my mom and the photographer, "I don't know how to knit." And my mom said, "Well, just act like you can knit." And I said, "I can't act like I can knit because I don't know how to knit."
Sure, that's
and my mom just kept repeating, "Just hold it, and look at it and act like you can knit." I was like, "What is this acting of which you speak, mother?" I have no, I had no clue. But
it was she was using the wrong daughter.
And I just remember that, and the fact that robe that I'm wearing was really itchy. So, but it's just funny because I have no clue how to knit, and yet I don't even know why he gave us knitting. Like what my mom would be doing behind me. This is very faux photography.
Yeah, I could not understand this picture. And it's funny, if you would have asked me like of the 10 things I thought you were doing in this picture, knitting was probably like 87. I had no idea.
Yeah.
And let's go. Okay, I think this is one of my favorite ones. We have like the three different shots of your mom. So are these all modeling pictures? Is this like her in action?
Yep.
Okay.
All different. And these were probably all 70s shots in the 70s.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like this one where she's looking. You think, is she about to realize she's got to run to another place? So what that is going on there?
Yeah, the one in the middle. Oh, I'm late.
And we go here, or we'll go back. Was this from Inception? Is that the Inception scene where he says the word and everything stops? Is that what it is?
I don't know. I don't know if that's from Inception. I wanted to have a picture, and it was hard to find a picture, particularly a picture in a restaurant where everyone just stops and stares. Because I have truly had that experience when I would be with my mom, and I thought I have to find a visual that shows what that looks like.
What is that like? What was that like?
I think I only became attuned to it when I was older. When I was younger, I was definitely not paying attention to people staring. But as we got older and we would go to restaurants, I would just realize over time, like, people are staring at us. And then I realized they're staring at my mother. And frankly, actually, it was true. I think I included in the tribute. I'm not sure if I had it in the Ignite speech, but she couldn't see. I never remember if it's short-sighted or nearsighted, but she couldn't actually see people close to her, and so
Farsighted. That's
time,
farsighted. Yep.
yeah, she would have no clue that people were stopping and staring, just no clue. And so we'd get to the table, and I'd be like, Mom, the whole entire restaurant is looking at you. And she'd be like, oh, they're not. Stop it. Pick what you're going to eat. And so anyway, I think that it kept it from going to her head because she would be unaware of it.
She literally couldn't see it. Oh, that's too funny. All right, so then we got to get to the infamous girls' school shot. So we got, are you in the middle here or no?
No, okay. I wanted to show a picture of girls walking with books on their heads. No, I'm in the shots on the left and right. I think I put a little circle around who I am.
Okay, so what's going on here? Is this just are you with friends? Are you just kind of random pictures?
This is Marion Heights Academy,
okay.
An all-girls high school in Southern Indiana, and the one on the left is math class, and the picture on the right I think is right before or after homeroom, and I think the one on the right we're seniors. We're going to be graduating soon, so we're very excited.
Senior of high school. Wow, you look so young. Okay, then we got this one. This is a great one. Where is it? Right here. So you are on your phone. Your eyes are your eyes open here, and your mom's smiling. Like what are we doing here? Oh, by the way, I like the lipstick matching the dress and your mom. I like that. Very good coordination.
Thank you. It's funny because I wasn't going to include this photo, and my daughter is the one that said, oh, I love this photo. And I thought, yeah, but my eyes are closed. And she said, well, that's what makes it great. And I was like, because I look like an idiot? And she said, no, it's just, it's a great shot because I'm on the phone. And this is when I'm talking about my mom calling me. And even though obviously this isn't a scene where she called me because she's right next to me, but I wanted to convey that connection that we had.
So you were on the phone. Who took the picture?
I have no idea.
Okay. This is just like a random one you had?
Yeah.
Okay. And then was this the one that you really loved with the see-through glasses, your mom? Was this the one you talked about earlier?
No, it's earlier. It's
this one.
It's more, that one. That's my favorite picture.
That's your favorite picture. Why?
She looks like my mom there. She doesn't have a ton of makeup on. She looks free. She's casual. It's natural flowing hair, and yet she's beautiful. So for me, that's for a representation of beauty, it doesn't have to be that glamour shot, the big hair, all of that. It can be that. And that's just it. To me, that was her.
Okay. Then we get to, this is the one you showed earlier, the big hair, right? Let's get there.
Yeah.
This is at the end of her modeling career, right?
I call that her Morgan Fairchild.
Morgan Fairchild. And why this one?
I think because this part of the tribute, I'm talking about the burden of motherhood, right? This is where I talk about the fact that she would have to explain to officers, listen, I'm just trying to keep food on the table for my kids.
Yeah.
And I felt like in this picture, she has a distant, far off look. She's thinking about something. And, even though it's casual, I feel like to me, it's a demonstration of there's something on her mind that she's looking off towards. And it just seemed to be the right picture for what I wanted to say.
And then, okay, we got to talk about, so in the middle right here, your face.
Oh my God.
Was this before or after the high heel walking and president's lessons?
Well, the high heel lessons were throughout life because I was a tomboy as a kid. And then when I went to an all girls school, I wasn't really caring about high heels. So my high heel lessons were was a work in progress. We'll say that. Here, what's funny is we were with my aunt and uncle. It's for Christmas, and we were supposed to get dressed up to come down for Christmas dinner. But I was in high school, and so this was just a more dressed up uniform. So, like, I still clearly was thinking, well, you know, I live in a uniform my whole life, so I'm just gonna have a nicer uniform for Christmas dinner. And my mom comes down, you know, like this wonderful Indian sari outfit.
Yeah.
I've just got like a fancier uniform. It just cracks me up.
I love that. I think that picture's fantastic. And then and then and then was it you probably what, 4 or 5, maybe 3 or 4? I don't know.
Yeah. Yep.
When is this one?
That is University of Illinois. I
Okay.
had won an award. I can't remember what it was. I think maybe mortarboard or something. And my mom came down. They had a luncheon and everything. And so she was there. And I mean, this is, you know, that would have been in the late 80s and she still was rocking it. So it was just very funny. I thought, wow. And someone told me it takes a lot of courage to put pictures up there with your mom looking like a model. I was like, yeah, I have no vanity at this point.
When she came down to visit, did hold on. Did anyone ever, like, did you have those moments where someone's like, that's your mom?
Oh, of course. I remember going to a fraternity party and my mom came with, and
which
one
house
of the
do you remember?
guys, SAE.
SAE, okay. Okay, yeah.
I knew the SAE house really well. Great guys. And so I brought my mom with me. And one of the guys was like, so you said your mom's divorced. Like, is she dating? And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, who the hell are you? I just remember laughing a lot. So again, I'm thankful I had a great relationship with my mom. So it wasn't like, you know, why are people paying attention to my mom, not me? You know, like it was fun. It was fun to just see people's reactions and know that one, she couldn't see them.
Yeah. Yeah. It's perfect, right?
And two, I'd get some like really crazy comment like, hey, you know, is she dating?
Not you. Not you. There's the answer. Not you and never. And then let's get to, why did you end it with this one?
It's a picture I remember and I love. And it was, I think, the very first composite shot that she had. So for models, you have to have your composite, right? It's essentially your head sheet, the thing you send out. So people have resumes, models have headshots, and it's a composite shot. So she had this one as one of her first, and I love Ashley. That's my sister. She's the one going cuckoo in the picture, and
so it was cuckoo. She's saying like cuckoo.
Yeah, my mom was, you know, pointing to airplanes in the sky, and okay. And Ashley tells me later on, she was like, I knew there were no airplanes in the sky. Like, there was no airplane there. I was actually thinking mom was not feeling well because there were no planes there, but she's like, sure, I will wave.
What was this, Northbrook?
You know, it was the photographer's apartment. Okay. So downtown, I think actually it was like near Division. Okay. Gold Coast area. I think Victor Skrybneski, like a lot of photographers were in the same area in Chicago for a while. So it was just at the photographer's house.
I love that picture. Last lesson, so we talked about.
It's a lot of lessons we've covered.
I know. Talk about learning. So we've talked. Okay, so we covered. I gotta get this right because this will be embarrassing. Hold on. So look the part. And then, hold on, respect yourself. And then finally, the third lesson is?
Beyond executive presence, be present.
What does that mean to you?
Well, we kind of touched on it a bit when we talked about reading a room, right? So for her, executive presence was, and it's how they all tie together, showing command of the room because you have respect for yourself and you are able to present in a way that shows confidence and assurance. But her comment to me was that can verge on arrogant if you aren't present in the moment. There are those people who will use that executive presence to their advantage. They'll manipulate a situation or people. And so for her, the important lesson of that was, beyond having executive presence, you need to be present so that you are, we talked about this a little bit, you are understanding where people are coming from, you are listening to them, you are engaged in how they are feeling coming to this moment, not how you present yourself. And so that's why I intentionally said, beyond executive presence, that's important, but you have to be present because it's not all about you, it's about them. And that was invaluable. I mean, as a speaker, that's the key, that's the golden rule. It's not about you.
No.
You can come across, and you need to come across as someone who's credible, who's worthy of being listened to, but you earn their trust by being present for your audience. And I'm thankful because I don't know if I would have been a good speaker, earlier, if I hadn't had that lesson, if I didn't realize it's not just how I present and how I look. I mean, I can wear a really nice snazzy dress or blazer or whatever. That doesn't mean a hill of beans if the person who I'm sitting across with, I'm not engaging with them, right? I could come across as a real jerk if I'm not there for them. So that's why I made it pointed. All three lessons connect together, and they tie for a reason. You can't have one without the other, and that's what I was trying to convey with that tribute.
So you made this tribute. You decided to do it entrepreneurial. You are very entrepreneurial, and you focus on helping companies and individuals that are going through mergers and acquisitions. Am I saying that right? So what are some other lessons or some ideas if someone hears this and they're like, wow, Jennifer, she's got this lifetime experience, all these different things she's done in her life, all these business lessons. What else can someone expect when they work with you?
Oh, that's a tough one. I mean, really the thing that I have been told, because God knows I would be hard pressed to know what it's like to work with me, but that
So far so good here. I give you 2 thumbs up.
Well, I think, and it's why actually I would attribute my success both in advertising and in my marketing days, and I'm confident it ties back to a lesson from my mom, but I have an ability to see the value in others that they don't always see in themselves. And I think that comes from being present. I pay attention to what people's strengths are, and it made me a better leader because I could always figure out how to create a team dynamic where each person was playing at their best. And sometimes people just need that extra encouragement. They've got a skill set and they're good at something, but they doubt themselves or they're just not sure. And it's frankly, Eric, why I pivoted completely from being a chief marketing officer to what I do now. I mean, I walked away from a really good corporate career to literally start all over again. But it's because I saw so many people who I knew were really good, but because of the merger or the acquisition and hearing whether what they did before wasn't valued, or they doubted their skills because the metrics for success had changed. And they were so worried about, well, am I still valued? And I would continually say to them, absolutely, but you've got to demonstrate what that value is. The opportunity is not going to find you. You need to find the opportunity. So know what you're good at, know your value, and apply that towards the new vision, where we're now going. And I had more than one person say to me, "You're a really good leader in this time. How do you know that?" And I said, "Well, I've been through 3 multi-billion-dollar acquisitions. You know, after a certain point, you kind of figure out what's going to happen." And I found that the role that I enjoyed playing most was to really help people understand what they could contribute and then how to do that. And so that's why I left my marketing career to become a consultant in mergers and acquisition, which is so far from what I ever thought I would be doing. But I wanted to bring transparency to what happened so that people would have a better chance at seeing what the opportunity was, understanding how to navigate it, and not just survive, but thrive through massive business transformation. So I focused on M&A, but it applies to all change, really. I mean, everyone who's read my book, the reviews that I got.
What's the new book, or you have 2 books, right?
No, just the one. Right now, it's just one book. It's this book. Now what?
There we go.
And
product placement.
Thank you. And I usually I don't have it by my bedside. I did when I first wrote it, but my husband was like, "Okay, we got to get rid of the book." But for me, what was so rewarding was how many people who've written reviews for the book have said that it was invaluable if you're dealing with leadership change. It's actually why now so much of my speaking engagements are around just how to lead through uncertainty, right? How to navigate uncertainty brought on by crisis. Previously, that crisis was M&A, but now,
kind of timely, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we can find you on jenniferjfondrevay.com, I believe is the website.
Yes, jenniferjfondrevay.com.
If people want to reach out to you, what's the best way?
Actually, LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn, so you can reach out to me on my website for sure. But I always encourage people to connect with me on LinkedIn. It's where I highlight a lot of things that I'm doing or speaking events that I've got, or I just put stories, my random stories. I still put there. I've not yet transitioned to doing a newsletter. Only because I'm overwhelmed with newsletters myself. So I just on occasion like to post stories, and I think it's a nice break for most people from as we were joking before, the person who just tries to constantly sell you stuff on LinkedIn now.
Earn $1 million in 6 weeks. Here you do. Here's the 5 tips.
I'll just share a story.
Last question for you before you go. I want you to take a moment. I want you to imagine this is like we'll say it's like the mid to late 70s, and your mother is getting an award, and you are the one who gets to present her the award. So you're you now, you're time traveling back, and you get to present your mother an award. I'd like you to take a moment and what the award is, and then give a short speech about your mother.
Oh, wow. That's it's interesting. I gave a short speech already, but that was one side of my mom. So the award that I would have her receive was for her battle with Parkinson's. She got Parkinson's at a very young age. She was 50. And so the award that I would give her was for her heroic effort in battling Parkinson's for 20 years and never letting it stop her from being present, from being in the moment, from engaging with Ashley, my sister, engaging with me, working as hard as she could to be part of my kids' lives, through what can be a enormously debilitating disease. I've had so many people reach out to me whose parents have Parkinson's or who know someone with Parkinson's. So I wish that she was around so that I could actually give her that award, because she battled that disease for 20 years and she certainly would deserve it.
That's beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah. I bring the fashion model version of her to life, but there's a part of me that says that's a future speech. How to help people who are dealing with a parent who has a disease like a Parkinson's or an Alzheimer's or there's a multitude of diseases that your parents can have that just is really hard as a son or daughter, because you see a different version of your parents, and it can be tough as a caregiver. So that'll be a future speech, Eric.
Well, keep the articles and speeches going. It sounds like a lot of people are reading them from what we were talking about earlier, and it's I think it's awesome that you're so open about sharing and your journey, and I appreciate you coming on and teaching everyone, and we're learning things, and we had a few laughs along the way, and I really appreciate your time. It's good to see you again.
Thank you.
So we talked earlier. I thought I was joining the Army, and then it took like an extra year and all this stuff.
You've been busy.
But I haven't been on the club, but it's so good to see you. And I really appreciate your time. And thank you so much.
Thank you. It was great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you so much to Jennifer J. Fondrevay for joining the podcast and sharing those wonderful stories of her mom, Olivia, and the lessons she's learned. Jennifer can be found on LinkedIn, Jennifer Fondrevay. I'll post a link to her. She's also on YouTube. I'll post that as well. Video is wonderful. She is such a fantastic person. I really can't thank her enough. She was so generous with her time, and she really is caring. And if your company is going through some sort of situation where there is a merger and acquisition, or you just want to meet an interesting person, please reach out to Jennifer. On that note, I want to talk to you for a minute about my aunt. I don't have a lot of pictures of Aunt Lynn. She wasn't one that enjoyed the camera much. She was the cool aunt. She was the one who you could talk to, and she'd kind of fill you out a little bit, and then she'd say something like, well, are you dating her, or is she a whore? And you always just laughed at it. She never actually meant it, but she was just funny like that. She was also the very fun aunt. She not only threw Mardi Gras parties every year, famous for the beads and insanely strong hurricanes. She traveled the world, and she loved it. She went to Mardi Gras, I think, numerous times. She also took every niece and nephew to Las Vegas when we turned 21. My favorite story from that was, this is May of 2009. I'm a senior in college, for a couple of weeks before Michael Jackson died, and that will become somewhat important in a minute. So I walk in this casino. We were staying at Excalibur. So anyone who's been to Vegas knows Excalibur. It just reeks of smoke. People just pulling those machines nonstop. It's fun. And walk in, and I went through like a back door, and I was like, I had a great night. I think I made like $150. I think I gave like a $5 bill to the person vacuuming. That was my mood. I had a bunch of drinks, didn't lose my butt. Like, what a great night. And I walk in, and there's one person at the video poker, my aunt. So I walk towards her. She's slowly dragging a cigarette. She looks at me and goes, don't tell your father. For those who don't know, my aunt was the older sister of my father by about 10 months. I didn't know she smoked. She probably did a lot. I think she quit for like 10, 15 years. Quit maybe. And she looks at me, she was like, don't tell your father. At the time, I was way more of a bro than I am now, although I guess depending on how you feel about the podcast, you might disagree with that. At the time, I occasionally dip tobacco, and I had I had a lipper in. I had the tin, and I showed her. I said, don't tell my father. We both just burst out laughing. I sat there for about another hour and a half with her, just sipping a drink, playing a little bit of video poker, talking about the night. And I just missed it, but about half an hour earlier, Joe Jackson came in to Excalibur and was like, rah, 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 taking pictures of people and just being completely insane. That was about 2 weeks before Michael died. So I just missed Joe Jackson, but more importantly, I got to spend that entire time with my aunt. When she got sick, I thought she'd get out. We had a phone call maybe about a month ago, and she's like, Eric, I'm never getting out of this hospital. And I try to stay positive. I'm a pretty positive guy. I'm like, no, you'll be fine. Drinks will flow. And she's like, I'm not getting out of here. And then I saw her before she passed. And then I saw her in that casket. And I saw the pictures. I remembered our memories together. And I just felt like she was gonna be buried. pictures, the few we had would be lost, and memories fade over time. My dad gave this wonderful eulogy where he talked about how they walked to school all the time. They talked. That's one of the things that my dad and I do all the time. We walk and talk. Then we walk the dog. He always, after soccer, would I'd pass to him, he'd run ahead, talk to me, and then he pass, I'd run ahead, and we always talk during that. It's one of the reasons I like walking meetings. Also, meetings stink. It actually stinks, not a strong enough word. Meetings suck. You should always walk around, get some fresh air, but I love to do that. And I think one of the reasons is because my dad, because he did it with my aunt. And stories like that help me connect the dots in my own life. And I think for those of you out there that are looking for some meaning right now, whether you've lost a relative, a job, or something completely different, taking that time to really find those memories and find the things that connect the dots. Because now when I look at my dad, I can see my aunt, and I know that those activities they did when they were together, when I'm with him, I can remember her. And there's so many other things that she did. She was so wonderful. And Tamlin, I love you, and I will always miss you. And to anyone out there who's lost a loved one or is going through a tough time right now, find a way to connect those dots, because it's helped me out. And also take Jennifer's advice. Thank you so much for tuning in. You are all wonderful people. I love you all very much, and I hope you have a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, whenever you're listening to this. And if you do enjoy it, please subscribe, leave comments, usually positive ones ideally. But if you have constructive feedback, I'll take that too. Thank you again, and take care. Bye.